All right, I'm going to go ahead and finish up our notes and lectures here for the end of the Revolutionary War. You guys will have to watch this for homework as we're running out of time here, moving up towards the test on Friday. But I believe this is the slide we left off on with our last lecture, so we'll start with here. Cornwallis, General Cornwallis, is going to be one of the major generals that we're going to have, that England is going to bring over eventually. And his surrender is going to essentially signal the end of the war once they're finally able to trap him at Yorktown, Virginia. So the French are going to play a large role in this. We talked the last time we talked about the American Revolution, how the French come in, they help us primarily with the Navy because we don't have a Navy at all and the British are blockading us. So the French, what they do is they take their Navy and they sort of wait until the British are sort of trapped in the Chesapeake, and then they trap them from behind in the sea and basically just trap them there. So they have nowhere to go because they can't run anywhere, because if they run, they're running into the blockade, the now French blockade. And on land, Washington was able to essentially trap Cornwallis and Yorktown. With the French fleet blockading the harbor and with Washington surrounding the town of Yorktown, Cornwallis was forced to surrender. And this is going to be essentially the end of the Revolutionary War here, with Cornwallis and his men surrendering at Yorktown. So everything from here is going to be more peaceful, more negotiations led. And the British are really going to be, the British people back home in Britain are going to be part of the reason why the war ends. Not only have the Americans sort of, I guess, run the British thin like butter over too much toast, but they've also gotten the people sort of sick of the war. The government collapsed, the Tory government collapsed, and then people who were more anti-war, the Whigs, sort of take over. So the public is tired of war. It's been going on now for 5, 6, 7 years, on top of the Napoleonic Wars that are about to happen here soon, and all the wars that have happened before. They're really sort of tired of war, and that's going to be a continued theme. Like I said, with the Napoleonic War, Britain is going to be at war here for quite some time. So the people have been at war for a while. They're sick of it. The political party that takes over Parliament, the Whigs, are sick of it. So essentially, we're going to get the Treaty of Paris. Is going to be the treaty that's going to end the war, that will finally grant the United States their independence. As you see here, Franklin, Adams, and John Jay, are going to be the three primary negotiators that will negotiate this peace. So you see here in 1783 we get the Peace of Paris. And this slide here is sort of focused on what the United States is gaining from the peace treaty. First and most important is that Britain recognizes our independence. That's what the whole war is about, so that's definitely first and foremost. But after that, there are going to be a few other things that they're going to have to deal with. They're going to have to deal with boundaries, because remember, Britain is still in Canada, so like the Great Lakes and other part of the boundaries are going to be need to be negotiated. Remember that Spain was involved as well in the war, so that they sort of, we're going to have a little bit of a part to play in this too, especially with Florida. So the land all the way to Spain is going to be given to the South, is going to be given to the United States. So you have sort of this forming a definition of what the United States actually is. So we have a country, its independence is recognized, but then we have to sort of solidify the boundaries of that country. So a lot of that is taken care of. Here's the peace as well. And the U.S. kept control of important fishing areas, which is that Newfoundland great sort of fish dispensary up there. They get to control that. And remember, that's important for the New England colonies, particularly in their fishing and the boat trading that the boat making that they have up there. So it's going to be particularly important that they're able to keep control of that Grand Banks fishery. So here is a map of sort of showing what the landscape of North America looks like after the Treaty of Paris. You can see the light green, the United States, is going all the way to the Mississippi River now, basically right on that border of what will be the Louisiana Territory. So you see Spanish Louisiana. We'll be buying that in the Louisiana Purchase here within 20 or so years. 1803 is when that is. But you can see that the British are still up north. That's going to continue to be a theme. We'll see that, and that'll be important moving forward with the British in Canada. But then the Spain throughout most of the United States still. They have the Spanish North American territory, most of the Southwest, and then the Louisiana territory in Florida. So the United States grows beyond the 13 colonies here. They get sort of that Ohio River Valley land that includes Kentucky, Tennessee, or what is now Kentucky and Tennessee, and moving forward. So Britain's side of the treaty of the Treaty of Paris. Loyalists, they're not going to be persecuted in the United States, so if Loyalists stay in the United States, they can't be sent to trial for treason or anything along those lines. Congress they sort of recommended that they confiscate Loyalist property. They did that during the war, and then they basically recommend that be restored. So lands that were taken from Loyalists during the war are then restored to their former owners. And the states are going to honor debts, which is going to be important moving forward. So if you owed a debt to a British creditor, you still had to owe those debts. Now, why do you think they go through all this trouble basically to appease Britain? It's interesting because we win the war, and then we do give them some concessions here, particularly with how we treat former Loyalists within the United States. And that's going to be interesting because you see here the United States trying to build a relationship with Britain a little bit, because the footing that we're going to be on after the Revolution is going to be a shaky one. We'll get into the Articles of Confederation today in class, actually, but not a very shaky or not a very good solid ground to stand on to start your country off. And the threat of Britain is ever looming. Going back to the last slide, you can see here that Britain is still right on our doorstep, right up there in Canada. It's not like they're 3,000 miles away back in Britain. So we want to make sure that we're fostering some sort of goodwill with Britain. We don't want that ill will, because if they decide, after a couple of years they've had enough time to rest up for the war and they decide they want to come back, well, that could be a real problem. So we want to make sure that we're trying to build an economic relationship, particularly with Britain, after the war, as a means to sort of self-preservation to a certain extent. All right. America is the only country that gained from the Revolution. Remember that there are going to be a lot of losers here, basically. So Britain obviously was defeated. France is going to, in just 6 years, I think 1789 is the beginning of their French Revolution. So the aftermath of the American Revolution will definitely lead to the French Revolution with all the debt that they have. America gained their independence as a country, so that's good. But Spain is also going to be sort of harmed here by the revolution. They're going to be in a war with France in just a couple of years. In 1800, I believe, they have to cede the Louisiana territory back to France. So there are going to be a lot of sort of downsides here, except, of course, for the Americans. All right, last slide here. Key to the chapter. The colonists achieved victory for now, but face the problem of what's next. And that's going to be what next in terms of the government, and what's next in terms of foreign policy. So there's really the bigger question now that they have independence is, where do we go from now? And that really is a more important question. The issue of independence was more immediate, but the what's next is definitely going to be a more difficult question to answer. As we've talked about several times, inflation is very high. The printing of continentals and even the printing of state money is going to make things pretty bad in terms of inflation. As we will talk about today in class, the Articles of Confederation are not very good. They're not sustainable. It's sort of a little bit of review from Gov last year, but we'll talk about that today and tomorrow in class. And then lastly, victory brings land, as we saw from that last map, and the desire for expansion. The major theme that really is going to pervade through the time after the revolution is going to be westward expansion. So that desire for westward expansion, we'll talk about the Monroe Doctrine, we'll talk about manifest destiny when talking about westward expansion. But this is really going to lead us to some new lands, as we saw on the map, and with new lands come a new desire to settle those lands. So that'll be a major key moving forward as well.